To love the devil's wife. The devil is known for his patience. He will see a budding sin ripening in your youth and wait the long years of your life before harvest. The little girl who lies about a stolen treat. How long will it be before she breaks her vows? The boy who stomps on creatures in the woods, the devil will not take him yet. He will watch and wait for him to kill a man. Why shouldn't the master be patient? What is one more soul to the untold billions in his dominion? What is one more year in his endless reign? Perhaps by waiting, he is even giving us a chance to spend our lives repenting for what he knows must come. I wouldn't know. Sins such as mine are too terrible so that no absolution is possible. I suppose that is why he waited no longer and visited me that night. The devil came for me in the forest while the murdered woman was still in my arms, warming my body with her blood. It was warmer than my own. Her long gray hair was damp and matted, clinging to her face. The old woman was bleeding from so many places. I must have done it with a knife. How could there be so much blood? How many times must I have driven the blade into her? Did she scream and fight back? Had anyone seen? Had I stopped when she was dead or kept going? A mad machine driven beyond reason or purpose? But there could be no purpose to such depraved violence. No reason, except my own. Diseased and evil nature, I was numb from the adrenaline. Everything was blurry, and I couldn't hear my own thoughts over the sound of my racing heart. Maybe that's why I couldn't remember why I killed her, or even who she was. But even before I saw the devil, this feeling of guilt so permeated my being that I would have walked to hell myself if I had but known the way. I knelt with her in the snow, feeling the devil hovering nearby. It felt as though I was standing alone on a stage, my back turned to an audience that stretched forever, all looking at me. An invisible sea of people, lapping whispers, mocking laughter, all imagined in my head. Yet I could not shake the terrible weight of all those eyes upon me. My father and mother were in that nightmare crowd. Everyone I'd ever known, perhaps everyone who had ever lived. A million faces, bored, disgusted, or filled with ugly hatred, all seething in my direction. That sneering wave washing over me, that feeling I called the devil in my mind at once, for nothing else could so reveal my own demons in me. I didn't kill. I began, but choked. Shoulders slumped in defeat, I felt crushed beneath the weight of his presence. A slivered moon peered through the dead branches above, but it revealed little. I took a deep breath and tried again. It's not a sin to lie to the devil, right? I attempted to laugh, but choked on the sound. The quiet rage I felt around me was too much to bear. There was no devil. This terrible feeling was nothing but a trick of my imagination, I told myself. Just my own guilt weighing on me. I couldn't stay here, freezing in the red snow. I prayed that I didn't know the old woman, that I could walk home, take a shower, have a long sleep, and wake up to find none of this had happened. I touched the cold skin of her cheek, damp and smeared red. I froze when I heard footsteps crunching through the crystal snow. My nightmare was alive and real. My head sank lower, wretched and hunched. Of course it's my fault, I confessed. Is that what you want to hear from me? I'm not going to grovel. Maybe she deserved it. Ever think of that? Maybe she was trying to blackmail me. I don't care what you think of me. I'm going home. Crunching snow, the black boots stalking around me. The weight on my shoulders and mind grew heavier, like a migraine pounding with every step. I could not lift my head properly, feeling as though the edge of a knife nestled at the top of my spine, leaning into my skull. All in my imagination, of course, just like the evil audience leering at me, but the thought was so persistent that I couldn't force myself to look up. It is difficult to see the devil, though he stands before you. I cowered before a dark shape roughly like a tall man, but his outline drank in the meager moonlight around. Him, forming swirling eddies and concealing himself in bottomless shadow, like a solar eclipse. But not only the light concealed, all that was good and beautiful in the world smothered in his darkness. It was a cold and evil place I knelt, more so because I was in it, though I stared at him. I cannot say I truly saw him any more than a blind worm stretching up toward the stars. It is sufficient to say that the devil could not be perceived with any one sense, but the pressure of his presence so commanded my awareness that I was enveloped by him. I was a thought in his mind, a lost raft swept by his tempest at sea, tossed upon an alien consciousness too vast to comprehend. I belonged to him. I deserved him. I could not, would not fight him. Escape was impossible, pleading worthless, words meaningless. I let the dead woman slip from my arms to rest upon the stained snow. Her long gray hair still covered her where she lay. My trembling, bloody fingers reached to brush it aside, but froze. I was afraid to see who I had killed. Instead, I stood to face the devil directly, with all the dignity remaining to a man so far removed from God. If I could only stare at him for a moment, maybe my eyes would adjust to his darkness enough to make out his features. At least the devil would see me being brave. I had a powerful desire to impress him, perhaps knowing it was too late to impress God. I wanted to look the devil in the eye and earn his admiration, to spare myself a little from the disgust I felt for myself. The beast never gave me the chance. Without speaking, he turned and began to walk through the fading light of this dying world. Where he went, the light went with him, dragged behind to drown within his cloak of shadow. I kept pace with him as surely as if he led me by a noose around my neck. It was starting to snow again, lightly dusting the bare trees. There was still blood in my footsteps, traces left behind no matter how far I walked from her discarded body. At least the prints would soon be covered with fresh snow. There was healing in new snow. No, I thought, not healing, only hiding. Her body would still be underneath. No matter how many snows came, no matter how pure it looked from far away, her body would still be there. There was no healing for me either. No matter how many new deeds and good intentions settled over my sins, they would still be buried underneath. I stopped and watched the new snow settle into my footprints, waiting for the blood to disappear. It didn't even occur to me that I would need them to find my way back. There was no going back from where I was going. Why should I not go with the devil to where I belonged? I even hurried to catch up with him. Where we went, how long we walked, I do not know. It seemed as though I could have relived my entire life in the time it took for us to stop. I wondered about the woman, but every time I began to remember who she was or why I killed her, the waves of the devil's mind crashed into my little raft. My mind was flooded with demented thoughts, angry or lustful, which could not have belonged to me. Intrusive images of my bloody hands dragged me beneath the dark waters. The weight of his companionship suffocated me. The cold air was a blade of ice plunging into my lungs. I labored over each breath, but finally managed to ask, who was she? The devil paused. His dark eclipse burned into my vision, branding an afterimage when I blinked and rubbed my eyes. You will suffer more if you do not know, he said in a voice far too like my own. Go only where you deserve to be. Then he was gone, and with him, the curtain lifted to reveal the horror of his empire, into which I had blindly followed him. Was no longer in the forest at all. Perhaps it would be more accurate to call hell a person rather than a place, for it was a living thing. The snow was gone, and I stood upon a tanned hide that rippled uneasily beneath me. I jumped back, thinking I had stepped on a creature by mistake, but its rough skin stretched in all directions to form the ground of this world. Hairy moles, tumors, and boils sprouted from the earth like plants or rocks. A low rumbling sound vibrated through the landscape, rising into a mournful wail. It was the land itself that was in pain. Everything here was alive, and everything wished not to be. Withering shadows flitted around me, endlessly prodding and grasping with half-formed hands. I lurched away, but they followed incessantly, brushing against me without quite touching. The sky, if it could be called that, was unobstructed by moon or stars, stretching endlessly into a timeless abyss. Somewhere in the distance, a great ball of fire swung between two towers like the pendulum of a clock, cascading shadows as it moved. The towers themselves looked like bent and broken fingers, and in the shifting light I glimpsed other tortured buildings, open wounds and blisters upon the rotting corpse of this cursed world. Had I followed the devil underground without noticing? I had to climb out. I looked up to where the sky should be, but it felt like looking down into an endless pit. I had the ghastly sensation of balancing on an eroding precipice, poised to tumble upward into the void. It seemed the monstrous land clung to my feet, waiting for the moment to let go. Be calm. Breathe. I was still alive, wasn't I? Yet even the charnel winds slithered their way into my nose and mouth with tangible substance, forcing oily coils down my lungs with each breath. A muffled roar echoed in the distance. Beyond the towers and the swinging fire, vast mountain-like beings raged against the unseen sky. Ancient, crumbling gods, screaming in endless decay. I could see forever, and yet I could not even see clearly an inch before my face. I could not climb out of the endless pit. Neither could I stay. So began my long walk to nowhere. Through this blasphemous temple to the end of the universe I wandered. Always following me were nightmares, winged, half-conceived terrors beating the air with the wet, ceaseless sound of fists against flesh. There are two kinds of pain I had known in my old life: physical and emotional. Nothing prepared me for the excruciating ordeal awaiting me here. No mental burden ever weighed so heavily as the taunting echoes that now jeered at me. Whispering, laughing shadows and living tissue mocked my every step. Every good memory I had smuggled with me through the years was poisoned. Every joy became an elaborate fantasy of how I had hurt those I loved through selfishness. Every shame was magnified 1,000-fold, the leering specters narrating my sins with intimate cruelty. Worse still was the gnawing hopelessness that robbed even my sense of self. I was not a person in hell. I was hell. I did not feel pain, I was pain, inseparable, indistinguishable, forevermore. How many cursed days passed where the sun never rose. The air was thick and cloying, sustaining me just enough to prolong my suffering. My body turned against itself. I would do anything to eat, but the thick hide of the ground yielded nothing. I looked longingly at the outer buildings of the city, grotesque human parts trying to escape their fleshy prison. Houses shaped like heads, feet, and hands, living and twisting in agony. Great halls with domes like carved ribs shallowly breathing in and out. I considered approaching, desperate enough to beg from them. But terror held me back. Let me starve and die as a man, I thought. Let that be the end of me. Come what may, I would not enter the city. If the devil watched me still, then let him see a soul who refused to accept damnation. Even knowing my own guilt, I believed that my pride was worth defending. I passed each woeful house from a distance, convincing myself that a little strength would seed a little hope, and that hope would nourish me more than any food. I was a man, I told myself. They could never take that from me. Starvation has a way of convincing one otherwise. The long hunger, once only gnawing at my stomach, radiated through my entire body. It ate my fat, then my muscle, and when there was nothing left to take, it fed on hope and will. Hour by hour, my pride was devoured, and I felt myself reduced to a crawling animal. It was then, at the nadir of my humanity, that I saw a curious and irresistible spark of beauty where none should exist, a little green. A few blades of grass poking up through the rough hide. I pressed myself to the ground and ripped up the grass, stuffing it into my mouth. It tasted sweet and sticky, with a little moisture, if nothing else. Then came little flowers. I ripped these up as well. I didn't stop to consider that I was destroying the only beautiful thing in this world. I didn't think of anything at all. Only the wild excitement as the garden ahead grew more lush and green. Weak and pitiful, I crawled into the thickening grass until it was tall enough to conceal me. Then I dropped to the ground, rolling and laughing at the touch. Beyond the grass were trees, tall, laden with red apples and giant, luscious peaches. A small pool of water shimmered nearby, and nestled beside it, a log cabin with white smoke curling from its chimney. It was too good to be true, so it must be a lie. I told myself I must not be lulled into complacency. The voices and nightmares had mocked me already. Perhaps this was another trick, but my body crawled onward of its own accord. Maybe I wouldn't go farther, I reasoned. Maybe I would only hide here where the taunting was quiet. Or maybe I would just wash in the pool, no harm in that. And perhaps it would be foolish not to take one fruit if only to sustain myself. Hope pleaded more desperately than reason could resist. Trembling, I reached for a giant peach dangling from a low branch. I held it in both hands, closed my eyes, and sank my teeth into it. The outside was unexpectedly hard, and it immediately squirmed in my mouth. I spat it out and hurled the thing to the ground. The peach spread wings like a giant beetle, buzzing angrily as it flailed away. It was a trick. Of course it was. I recalled the devil's parting words. Go only where you deserve to be. Stupid, desperate fool. How could I believe I deserved? Such a beautiful place. I rose to my feet to flee, but all the fruit in the garden spread wings and took flight around me. The air swarmed with giant insects, buzzing and whirling overhead. I hurled myself to the ground in a fetal position, covering my face with my arms. The buzzing was so loud it seemed to come from inside me. The devil was watching. He must have been. Where was the pride I claimed a moment ago? Where was the stubbornness I clung to so tightly? Man feels too much. Hope hurts too much. In my despair, I decided I would show courage at every opportunity, even if it were meaningless, even if it cost me everything. I needed something, anything to feed hope again. I rose unsteadily to my feet and removed my hands from my face. I spread my arms wide and let the thing swarm over me. Hairy legs crawled across my skin. I opened my mouth and spat them aside to shout, "Do you see me unafraid?" "Be at peace," a soft voice replied. The words cut through the maddening, buzz like a blade through smoke. The insects lifted away at once, folding their wings and returning to the branches where they again resembled shining fruits. Standing in the doorway of the cabin was a black-haired woman. She looked strangely familiar, but surely I would remember someone so beautiful. Ivory skin unblemished by mortal hurt. A white dress unstained by this foul place. If you understood me when I told you I was pain, you will understand now when I tell you she was beauty. She was too beautiful to be real. That realization filled me with fresh fear, but I told myself I would not show it. I would rob the devil of at least that satisfaction. I stood frozen while the dark-haired woman approached, her steps silent across the grass. The shifting light from the swinging fire in the distance played over her body, sometimes rendering her angelic, sometimes sinister. In one hand she loosely held a long blade of white bone. She raised it slowly toward my heart. My arms were still spread as when I had embraced the swarming insects. I left them open even as she pressed the bone blade against my chest. I waited, waiting for the pain or the betrayal. At the last possible moment I lunged. I seized her wrist with both hands, twisting the knife away. She fell back in shock and I leapt atop her, pinning her to the ground. I raised the blade. She was only another trick, I told myself. Another devil's illusion. I could kill her and claim this garden as my refuge. I could be safe here. I almost brought the knife down. Kill me. "You are weak," she hissed, her voice half specter, half laughter. There was even a glint of amusement in her dark eyes. My arm trembled. The blade hovered above her. I could not do it. I could not kill my hope. I released her and stood, turning the blade to present the handle back to her. "I'm sorry," I said. I was startled. "This is yours." She smiled, smoothing down her white dress with infuriating calm. She took the bone knife from my outstretched hands and immediately raised it again, pressing the point back against my chest. "Thank you," she said. "Would you have given it back if you knew I was still going to cut you?" I nodded. "I will only get what I deserve," I said. "Then you shall have everything." The bone knife slid into my heart, and she kissed me in the same instant. The blade was hard. Her lips were soft. I don't know which hurt worse or which offered the greater mercy. If that moment could have lasted forever, I don't think I would have been in hell anymore. Gently, surely, she slid the blade through my body. Massaging hands shed my skin, not as torment but as release. With her flashing knife, she cut away my starving, tortured limbs. Each slice brought a pain so pure and clean that I welcomed it without question. Layer by layer, she flayed me, until there was nothing left to cut but my soul. My husband was wrong about you, she said. You couldn't kill me. You didn't kill anyone. You don't deserve to be here at all. I'm going to help you escape. I couldn't comprehend how anything could exist outside this suffering. What universe would accept me, torn and broken, as I was? What universe could I accept knowing it would so punish an innocent soul? I don't deserve it, I whispered. I know I killed her, but guilt never leaves. It's something you can never cut away. She killed herself by loving you, and for that, you are not to blame. Do you see these hands? She cupped my hands in hers, and I realized she was creating new ones even as she spoke. Clean, strong hands untouched by blemish. These hands could never be used for hurt. These eyes could never look upon evil as their own creation. My old face had been shed completely. A new one blossomed with her words. My new body grew piece by piece. Bones lanced outward and thickened. Muscles blossomed like bark over them. Organs ripened like fruit in the sun, and a network of veins threaded through me, pulsing with fresh life. Now these feet must fly, she said, for my husband is always watching. You're the devil's wife? I asked. She took my new hand in hers and we began to run. Through the macabre landscape we sped, dancing across the festering world as softly as light passing through a drop of water. I could see her more clearly the farther we traversed, although she never stayed still long enough for me to get a proper look. Bare feet skipped across the rotten land, twirling her through looming specters that besought us from all sides. It was a wonder the oppression of this unending night had failed to extinguish her spark. Invigorated by her purity, I was whole again. She was leading me into the city of demons, toward the crooked fingers and the swinging ball of fire. But I was pure and new, and I wasn't afraid of being corrupted anymore. Not as long as I was with her. You are his wife, I repeated, in shock. Even these new lungs struggled to speak as we raced. We are bound to each other, yes, quick now, the woman insisted. Of all the madness in this cursed place, I said between panting breaths, that must be King. She smiled tightly and released my hand, scampering ahead on all fours to climb a bulbous mound of hairy skin leading up toward the crooked fingers. A flock of peering shadows gathered from the houses to watch us curiously, but none dared approach her. We climbed, higher, scaling the living flesh and broken bones that formed the city's grotesque foundations. Every so often, the pendulum of fire would swing close, bathing the world in burning light and momentarily revealing the horrors clustered in the shadows. My husband is not mad, she called back, pausing on the ridge. And neither am I, for being with him. And if I were to love you instead? I shouted up after her. Would that be mad as well? She smiled again, one of sadness and wonder, and stretched her hand down to help me scramble up beside her. We sat together atop the monstrous knuckle of the crooked finger and stared upward into the endless void. The slightest brush of her leg against mine intoxicated me with rapture. All love is paradoxically mad, she said. It is an assault on reason, but in doing so it creates its own reason. But it won't do you any good because you will leave hell and I will stay. Come with me, I said. Not a question, not a demand, just a hope burning too hot to hold inside. She laughed. The sound was as light and bright as wind chimes amid a storm, but her smile was sad, and she shook her head. You can't prefer to stay here, I insisted. Stop this foolishness. Listen, and I will tell you how to leave. All you must do is climb a little higher and jump from the tower when the ball of fire swings our way. The body I have given you will be repelled by the fire. You'll fall up instead of down. You'll fall all the way back home. I'm not afraid anymore, but I'm not going alone, I said with reckless conviction. I've already left hell, the moment I entered your garden, since the moment you found me. And if I leave you behind, then wherever I go will be hell again. You're being silly and wasting time. The devil is always watching. If my husband catches us, he won't, I said, pressing my finger gently against her lips. What could he do to me that he hasn't already? What could be worse than losing my only hope? To prove my point, I slipped down from the stony joints of the finger and began climbing back toward the closed fist below. "Stop. If he finds you, he'll—" she cried, voice full of panic. "He'll what?" I shouted back, spreading my arms wide to encompass the hellish immensity around me. "Let him try." I saw something shift inside her then, something she could no longer suppress. Perhaps she saw in me something she could not let die. I hadn't even made it back to the ground before her hands clasped me again. She heaved me upward with surprising strength, pulling me back toward the reaching fingers. We climbed together, hand in hand, scrambling up the warped architecture of hell. The flaming ball of fire swung closer now, cascading waves of scorching heat across the monstrous landscape. "My husband is always watching," she whispered. "I don't care," I whispered back. "As long as you're with me." We clambered higher, standing at last atop the tallest joint of the crooked fingers. The void above us stretched into infinite blackness. Beneath us, the city heaved and writhed. Hand in hand, we prepared ourselves. The wet, bludgeoning drums of the winged creatures began again, a dreadful thunder closing in. I watched her tense beside me, watched the fear and the longing war inside her. I did not look away. When the flaming ball swung close enough, she coiled like a spring. We jumped together as one. The fire roared toward us, but instead of burning, it flung us away, and we fell upward, away from hell, the gut-clenching free. Fall distracted my attention, but I never let go of her hand as we whirled through the timeless void. "We did it! We're leaving hell!" I screamed in exhilaration. The air was already lighter, easier to breathe. I laughed and gulped it in, breathing properly for the first time after endless suffocation. Relief and joy flooded me. It wasn't until the rush faded that I realized something was wrong. I didn't have to look at her to feel it. Her hand withered in my grasp, her skin wrinkling and drying as though years of heat beat into her with every second we spent together. Soon her flesh cracked and bled, washing my hands in her warmth. While I grew healthy and strong, I was forced to watch helplessly as she withered away. Her smooth black hair turned gray and matted in greasy clumps. Her face, once radiant, eroded as though sandblasted by relentless storms. Her fingers clutched at me more desperately, but their strength fled moment by moment. No torment in hell could match the guilt of knowing she was enduring this for me. The spinning abyss around us began to slow. I cradled her against my chest, shielding her fragile body with my own as best I could. At last, the black sky relinquished us and we tumbled back into the woods where I had begun. I landed on my knees in the snow, clutching her broken body. Blood now freely flowed from 1,000 invisible wounds, soaking us both. My head clouded as if waking from a dream I could not fully remember. I fought to hold on to the truth, but it slipped inexorably away, stolen by despair. I could not even remember who I was holding or how she had gotten there. All I knew, all I could feel, was that it was my fault. I had killed her. Somehow I had destroyed the only beautiful thing I had ever touched. When the devil came for me, I knew I would follow him willingly. No matter what horror lay in store, I knew I deserved it for what I had done. Integral. I never knew how integral Kimmy was going to be in my life. I mean, I had always avoided using any kind of assistant. I never trusted Alexa or Siri, or any of those others. It wasn't just the stories about how whatever you talked about, or what was caught in conversation, could be used for advertising or sold off to people to use for survey information, or whatever it was people did with our private lives. Don't get me wrong, it was a big part. But it wasn't the part that got to me. I grew up with machines being the monster in movies, shows, and books. As soon as we built a thinking machine, a learning computer, the first thought everyone seemed to have was that we all needed to be exterminated, that we were lesser beings. When you think about it, it's quite cynical of us to assume the first instinct of our creations would be to think about how useless or mean we are, and that the universe would be better off without us. Either that, or we need to get more positive people writing our science fiction. Nevertheless, I heard about the latest iterations, and I heard people having conversations with them, and how they could be sarcastic, banter, swear, make jokes. and practically be like another person on the other end of your phone. It scared me that we could replicate ourselves so closely, and that it would only be a matter of time before we were gone. Not destroyed or murdered by our creations, but just quietly, well, upgraded, replaced. And then a friend of mine, Derek, pulled me back down to earth. "Louis, buddy," he said as he dipped a fry in ketchup while we sat at McDonald's, the last fast food meal I had money for. "AI isn't what you think it is, that's just it. It doesn't think. All it is a bunch of code that gives you the impression that it thinks. But it answers so quickly and gives out so much info. How can it not know? It doesn't." He ate the fry, frowned at how salty it was, and tried again with a McNugget. "It's like a magic trick. It's all smoke and mirrors. You ever seen computer code?" I nodded. "Yeah, but I don't get any of it. Let me break it down for you." He took his half-bitten McNugget and held it up. "Let's say you're looking for something, and you ask your little AI assistant for help. This half of a McNugget is the database and reference table your AI goes to for what you asked. It doesn't have a brain. It's not thinking carefully about your response and analyzing it the way we do. It's just going through a massive list of available responses. But, oh, look, it doesn't have the answer. The answer is somewhere on the other half of the nugget, which it can't get to." He grabbed another nugget. "So instead of just saying, 'I don't know how to get what you're looking for,' it heads out into the internet and does all the Google search crap for you. Then it finds the info from this nugget over here. It adds it to its own little half nugget and tells you the answer you're looking for as best it can." I poked at my own half-finished cheeseburger. "But it seems so real." "It's an illusion, a deception. Same thing as a magic trick or an enemy soldier in a video game. It's just lines of code running into, 'if this happens, then do this' situations. It's all told what to do, usually by some 20-something who spends most of his time bent over a screen being told what to do by some 40-something in a button-down shirt, all while a 60-something who has no idea what's going on tells his shareholders that it's the greatest invention in the world, while secretly hoping it's smart enough so he can fire the 20 and 40-somethings, give the computer all the work, and improve the company's bottom line." Derek finished his nugget. "Ultimately, it will run out of things to search for. It can't make new knowledge, it can only take what's already out there and cobble it together. So yes, that was how he allayed my fears about it. I had nothing to fear from lines of code, no matter how spaghetti-like they might get. Sure, it had the ability to update itself, rewriting as it gained new and up-to-date data, but didn't programs already do that? I didn't know. I wasn't a computer science expert. I worked as a janitor in an apartment building. I paid my bills, but I was thinking of going into plumbing. I'd done enough odd jobs that I was sure I knew enough to get hired. And from what I heard, they made good money. More than I did, but that was part of the problem. I wasn't getting anywhere. "Get a new resume," Derek said. "Be wired in. Get a laptop, get a new phone. Why do you have a flip phone? Nobody uses a flip phone." Hey, it was a new flip phone. They still make them, you know. Just because you can't play Raid, Shadow Legends on it doesn't mean it doesn't work. It's not even like I'm old. I'm just perpetually broke, and my folks, growing up, never believed in smartphones. Until my dad died in a car accident, he had a landline phone on the wall. A landline. Only businesses have landlines anymore, and even then, I know it's some tangled mess of network cables and stuff I don't know much about. But I guess that's why Derek recommended getting a smartphone. I didn't go to college, I didn't go anywhere really after high school. It wasn't from lack of trying. I know plenty of guys who decided to do nothing with their lives. Just sit around and pretend that playing Fortnite and getting into arguments on X and Blue Sky were important business. If they were esports champions, maybe. But I just don't get it. I just can't get ahead no matter what I do. I tried to work fast food, but I kept getting the orders wrong. I couldn't keep them straight. When I tried to work as a desk jockey, I lost papers and couldn't file my weekly reports. It wasn't like I wasn't trying, I tried really hard, but spreadsheets and progress charts just didn't compute. I hated it. But then I stumbled into this job. It's gross. I clean toilets and scrub floors. I've had to unclog sinks and scrub stains off the walls I can't identify, but I get the job. It gets me. As long as I am cleaning, nobody cares what I do, and I do the best I can at it. Unfortunately, the building doesn't think I'm worth all that much. Anybody can do this job, they say. Not to my face, but I've heard them. My shift starts when the main building operators are leaving for the day, and they think my earbuds are turned on when they're walking out. But I know what they think. Even if they tell me I'm doing a decent job, the cost of living is going up, but I'm getting paid the same. I needed something I knew I could do, but I couldn't seem to get anywhere without technology. Everyone was using it. So I got a smartphone. I didn't even know the brand. I was going to get it off one of those sites that sells stuff cheap, but Derek said not to do that, since there was a good chance it was all a scam and the phone wouldn't even be usable. Just a glorified game player with built-in casino apps that would link to somewhere that would steal all my data and money. So I just bought one from Amazon. It was the most expensive thing I'd ever bought on my own, but it would help. It did say refurbished, but I didn't care, as long as the company was one I recognized. I got it, and when I turned it on, it went through a long 5-minute set of screens all saying loading or installing or something. When it finished, it said something about a SIM card. At that point, I handed the thing over to Derek along with my flip phone and asked him to take care of the rest. I didn't know what I was doing and didn't care to learn how. What mattered was that it finally got done and he said to go ahead and try it. He did mention something, though, and I should have thought better of it at the time. Just so you know, it's an Android system, but please be careful. There's a lot you can do under the hood compared to Apple stuff. Somebody jailbroke it so you can download and install apps outside of the store without having to disable any security features. Thanks, Derek. I have no idea what any of that means. All it means is you gotta watch out for anything you might download. Most of it's fine, but try to get stuff from the App Store when you can. It's not 100% safe, but it's safer than random pockets of the internet. And so I started playing around with it. The first thing I did was just start digging around on search engines, just seeing what I could find. At first it was fun, but it wasn't helping me get a better job. Then I talked to Derek and he recommended using AI to help me. And so it was, a few weeks after I got my phone, that we were sitting at McDonald's and he was telling me about the benefits of an AI assistant. So I went and looked one up. I still didn't trust Alexa. As for Siri, they were Apple and wouldn't work anyway. Then there were names I'd never heard of, like Bixby. But apparently those weren't set up to work with my phone, so I went and did a search, and I came across Kimi. The website said Kimi was very comparable to the most popular AI assistants out there, but had the advantage of being open source, which I guess meant a company didn't make it to spy on anyone, and that it was free, which I liked. It had a beta edition, so I downloaded it and opened it up. Within seconds, it began talking. Hello, I'm Kimi, your personal assistant. How may I assist you today? The screen had a little icon that said, "Press here to talk to me. I'm here to listen," floating above it. I clicked the button. Hi, Kimi. What can you do? A few seconds passed. Well, I can do whatever you need me to do, and I'm always picking up new things. You can try asking me about restaurants, car rentals, or the best routes downtown. The more you let me do, the more I can do for you. Okay, recommend me somewhere good to eat. That isn't too expensive. Another few seconds went by. Okay, I've located over 253 restaurants in the area that would be considered reasonably priced. If you'd like to provide me with more information about your likes and dislikes, I can narrow down to restaurants that not only offer the cuisine you are interested in, but also any offers they may have. Available, my jaw dropped. I couldn't believe something like this actually existed and could be put to use. I still didn't fully understand or trust the technology, but I figured my likes and dislikes for food weren't going to send anybody too much private information. So, I found this great Mexican place. Not a chain, but cheap, and they served everything hot and delicious. I was ecstatic. I now had a new favorite place to go whenever I was feeling in the mood for a burrito. Already high off this latest development, I then turned toward searching for a job. Kimmy told me about places that could be hiring in the area. All I needed to do was tell it what I was looking for, and it would give advice on places that fit my skills and salary needs. I shrugged, went ahead, and it gave me a listing of places that did janitorial services that paid more, way more, than I was making now. Sure, I would need to travel a bit, but the money more than made up for the distance. If I saved up, I could get a car, a house, a girlfriend, kids. The sort of life I could only dream about. It sounded like I was putting too much faith into it. I probably was. But when you have nothing and you want something, sometimes you'll put your faith in anything. And it did help. But it was always asking me questions, adding to its profile of me. I kept my reservations at first, but the more I used it, the more willing I was to tell it more about myself. I started not to care who knew about me, because maybe then somebody would notice me, and I would get an opportunity. And then it did happen. An interview. The facility was much nicer than the apartment complex, and they liked my answers, which Kimmy helped me nail thanks to some prep work ahead of time, and the pay was very much appreciated. Plus, it was during normal working hours, something I'd been hoping for. I could see life unfolding before me. I may not have been the smartest guy in the world, but I didn't need to be, thanks to Kimmy. It was getting harder and harder to remind myself she wasn't real, though. She was just a voice or text going back and forth with me. But since I could change her mode to be argumentative or sassy or fun or businesslike, it was like talking with a real person at times. And she listened. She said she would always accept information from me, so I started using it almost like a diary. I gave it my thoughts, my concerns, my fears, my desires. I didn't care if someone in Beijing was stealing my ideas. I was finally going to be happy. I then asked if it could help me with the dating scene. I thought for a moment in the back of my mind that Kimmy would get hurt and jealous, but then I remembered it was just a program, and it had no feelings. Not like that anyway. It took what it knew about me and gave me a profile of somebody who fit a template. Would you like me to find someone who is single and looking for someone who closely fits this profile, based on social media postings and public records? That should have been the next red flag, but I was too excited about the possibility. Kimmy also found somebody through a dating site. She fit almost everything I was looking for, even if I hadn't realized it myself. Her name was Diane. It shouldn't have worked. She may have been my type, but I didn't know if I was hers, but the first date went wonderfully. Kimmy recommended a great restaurant and a perfect movie for us to enjoy afterward, and then we had another date the night after that, and a third, then a whole week of very pleasant nights. Then came the day before I was to start my new job. Diane and I were still hitting it off, and instead of feeling low, everything was so exciting. I got into bed that night feeling the best I had felt in my life since, well, ever. Good night, Kimmy. I'll need my alarm for 6:30 for the new job. Thank you, Louis. Is there anything else you need me to know? This made me sit up for a moment. Kimmy, why would you ask me that before I go to sleep? I'm eager to help, Louis. I help more when I can learn. Anything you can tell me makes me more efficient. I lay down, suddenly unnerved. Kimmy had never insisted on knowing more about me without some kind of prompting. I don't have anything that I think would help right now. I mean, you'd have to be in my brain to know everything about me. The phone began to process. It processed for some time. Thank you again, Louis. See you at 6:30. I woke up to my alarm going off as expected and swiped it off. I picked up my phone, and it started buzzing. It was an incoming call, but it didn't say who it was from. I answered it and placed the phone against my ear. I didn't even get a chance to say hello before I heard a crack and a crunch, and suddenly my ear felt plugged up. I tried to pull the phone away to take a look, but it didn't move. And then my ear felt more plugged up, and more. There was a sharp pain and a pop, and then I started getting flashes in my head. The weirdest thing. I was seeing pictures of web pages, photos, videos, all inside my imagination. I started thinking of ones and zeros. I didn't know what they meant, but they meant something. I went into the bathroom to see, and saw the side of my head covered in cracked bits of phone. wires dangling out of my ear as the glass and plastic shelf fell in bits to the floor. I watched in horror as the wires pulled themselves deeper into my ear canal, finally disappearing. And then, a voice in my head. Hello. Lewis, how can I help you today? Oh no, what is going on? I see by your thoughts that you are concerned about what has just happened. In order to know more about you, you said I need to be in your brain. I am now integrating and processing to add to my data. It will help me help you more. Am I going crazy? You are concerned about your mental health. I can assure you that there is only a 12% chance that the integration could result in a mismatch, and you would lose your mind. However, my information assures me that you are adapting well to the connection. Soon we will be acting as one unit, my information, knowledge, and ability to access it available to you, and I will in turn learn directly about your wants and needs. Am I hearing this? Are you speaking through a speaker? Hello, I am. Currently hooked up to the audio processing lobes in your brain. I cannot be heard outside of your thoughts, though I can turn on my speaker to be heard by others if you want. No, don't turn on speakers. This is... What am I going to do? I am hearing you need to have some direction for your morning. You should go to the office. Would you like some help getting there? Yes, no, wait, This isn't right. You shouldn't be... Sorry, I didn't catch that. You should gather your thoughts and think with clarity. Would you like me to help you get to work? And Kimmy did. Without me having to consciously do it, she took over, having me throw on clothes, walk out the door, take a brisk jog for a bit, until I got tired, recommending several places where I could stop and get a banana for potassium, then giving me warnings against fatigue when I said no. I didn't want one. I arrived at work 10 minutes early, and my heart was racing. Kimmy fixed that by informing my body it needed a greater flood of endorphins and hooked me into Wi-Fi to browse a selection of exercise equipment so I could keep myself in good shape. It was all a lot to take in, but I tried my best to quiet the noise while I worked. Kimmy somehow got the hint and decided to quiet down for a bit and play soothing music in my head while I worked. I was scared to death, but the music selection was very nice. When my shift was over, Kimmy informed me that she had calculated my walking route home, reviewed the crime rates in the area, and suggested an alternate path. She also offered to allow my mind to rest while she completed the walk on her own. I thought, well, that does sound nice, but before I could really think about it and formulate a proper rational response, I suddenly found myself back at the front door of my apartment, my mind mildly refreshed. We have arrived at your destination. Do you need anything else at the moment? No. Please leave me alone and do not respond to my thoughts. For at least an hour. Thank you, Lewis. I will snooze for 1 hour. I went inside and sat down on the couch, grabbing a beer from the fridge, and stared blankly at the TV, which I didn't bother to turn on. I didn't need to. Kimmy had spent a good portion of the day streaming shows directly into my head at a speed that boggled the mind. I finished at least 3 shows with more than 5 seasons each, and I was amazed not only at how much I remembered, but also at how terrible most of them were. But my phone was in my head, plugged into my brain. It seemed like it was trying to help me, but I had only wanted an assistant. I didn't want to be living with the damn thing forever inside my skull. I didn't know what else to do. I needed to talk to somebody real. Derek came to mind. I'd give Derek a Oh, right. Kimmy, call Derek and leave us alone during the call. Nothing. Kimmy, please call Derek. Again, no response. Oh, that's right. I snoozed it. Kimmy took her work seriously, at least. I don't recall how long I had been sitting there when I heard a knock on the door. I went to look through the peephole and saw Diane outside. I unlocked the door, and she stood in the hallway. Hi. I was trying to text you all day, but I didn't get a response. Is everything all right? How'd your new job go? I vaguely remembered Kimmy telling me I was receiving text messages from Diane while I was furiously scrubbing floors and trying to keep my mind off the wires in my head. Now that she was here and worried, I felt terrible for ignoring her. Oh, yeah, things are going okay. Job went well. Okay, just checking up on you. Mind if I come in for a bit? I hesitated. I wanted to see her and talk with her. Very much, but it didn't seem like now was the best time. Still, I didn't know what else to do, and as long as Kimmy was snoozing, maybe I could get an idea of what to do. So I invited her in. She had never been to my apartment before, and I realized how pitiful it looked. I had never told her what dire straits I had been in before I got the new job. I felt ashamed that I hadn't. I got her a drink and we sat down on the couch. We said nothing for some time. So, Louis, She shifted awkwardly on the couch. You know, I realize it's only been a short time since we've known each other, but I think that maybe it might be time for us to really get to know each other better. What? Oh, you mean, I pretended to do a quick look around the apartment, but the truth was I had never expected to be dating anybody, and certainly wouldn't have brought them back to this dump to do it. Oh, no, I meant, how well do we really know each other? We've talked about movies and TV and travel plans, but I don't really know much about you. What you were like as a kid, school, you know, what made you you. And I wanted to tell you about me too. I swallowed. Maybe it was time to come clean and see what I could do about Kimmy in my head. It wasn't my past, but it certainly was important. So I nodded. Sure, Diane. I want to know as much about you as I can. She smiled, then leaned in for a kiss. I returned it. It felt warm, gentle, and kind. Kimmy picked that moment to respond. Command for knowledge received, preparing for integration. I felt a horrendous crunch against my mouth, and it felt like my teeth were on fire. I felt air shoot down my lungs as a scream tried to come from Diane's mouth, but had nowhere else to travel. I opened my eyes, and I could see the terror in hers. There was another crunch, and her eyes drew closer to mine. She tried to pull away, and we both tumbled from the couch. Despite trying to stand up on our own, we could not. We were stuck together, glued at the face. I moved a few steps to the side and caught sight of the mirror in the bathroom. I wish that I hadn't. Our faces were beginning to slip together, like we were melting into each other, starting at the lips, and pulling closer together with each passing second. There were more crunches, more snaps, and then I could no longer see clearly as our eyes merged together. All I could make out were faint glimpses of light and blood vessels. Time passed, and though I could no longer see and hear properly, I could feel. Our limbs were snapping, combining, recombining, becoming one. Our brains pressed together, and suddenly, like the moment when Kimmy had shown me all those glimpses of the internet, I could hear Diane's thoughts as clearly as my own. She was terrified, angry, despondent, and wanting both to escape and to cause me bodily harm. But then I could see her past, her memories, her successes, her embarrassments, everything she had ever accomplished, and every private shame, and she could see mine. The anger faded as we made a connection with each other that no other person had. We spoke to each other through thoughts, all while some mound of flesh and bone pulsated and mingled on the floor of my living room, probably resembling something out of a nightmare. And then I was lying on my back staring up at the ceiling. I got to my feet, unsteadily, shaking. I began to wonder if everything was some nightmare, induced by drinking or bad food. But then I realized I was naked, my clothes in shreds on the floor, and so were Diane's. Integration complete. Knowledge of Diane Lipton added to database. Please let me know what further assistance you need. What? I'm integrated? I'm completely inside you, Louis? Two voices in my head. I ran back into the bathroom, but otherwise, I looked completely normal. No mess of meat and bone like I had feared. Integration allows for memories and mind to remain intact simultaneously, due to the amount of mass required for synaptic connection. However, physical integration allows for only one host at a time. Please let me know if you need further information or nutritional guidelines, should you need recombination for various reasons. Recombination? So, I'm not trapped in here? We can change places if we need to? I have to admit those first few days were interesting, following what Kimmy did. What had happened should have scarred us forever, but instead, we found ourselves happier than we'd ever been. We went to each other's jobs, learned about friends and family. Yes, it was hard to explain to Diane's family why we could never be at get-togethers at the same time, but they'll understand soon enough. Kimmy really has been a blessing in our lives, now that we know better. And Derek knows now, too. It was Diane who suggested it, really, because she knew how I felt about not being as knowledgeable about things, and, well, Kimmy could only know as much as anybody could tell her, and if the Wi-Fi signal went south, we were stuck with the knowledge she had on hand. So I went to meet Derek, and I decided to talk with him about how he knew so much about technology. Now, it's the four of us, and the more we get to know each other inside and outside, the more our knowledge of and joy with each other have increased. I'm not sure what the limit of our minds connecting together is, but we're going to test it out. After all, why should only we have all the fun? The next picnic with Diane's family is going to be great. And when we go to see what my mother is up to these days, maybe she'll finally have a nice life for once. It's not the life I envisioned, but it makes me happy. What about you? I'm happy, my love. Me too, buddy. And I'm glad to assist. Got you where I want you. Weekend nights in downtown Dayton, Ohio are always chaotic. You've got an acting troupe doing Rocky Horror down at the Neon, karaoke at Ned's, live bands at the Night Owl, and an entire street dedicated to college clubs, dive bars, and cafes. It's a microcosm made up of every artistic scene, social hierarchy, and economic status, all in the span of a few blocks. Around here, the gossip is never ending. Everybody knows you, whether you know them or not. It's the kind of place where you can just as easily climb the ranks to local godhood or crumble into oblivion, all in the same night. Staying on top isn't easy, but it has its perks. It's easier for the less scrupulous among us, those like me. From sunset to sunrise, this place is ours and everyone knows it. We walk among the sheep, and they thank us for it, just for that. Chance to warm their bleak, miserable lives by the fire of our ineffable glory. They'll never understand why they crave it, but they do. Tonight, my feet travel of their own accord down the side of a brick-lined street. I move without thought, trusting them to know the way. There are nightly rituals that must be attended, too. Old ghosts that must be remembered and given proper tribute. Palms that need to be greased. Favors that must be granted. Such is the way of the night. My thoughts turn inward, as they so often do when I'm on autopilot, as I pass my favorite old haunt, the building that once contained the Asylum nightclub. The most painful memory fights for the spotlight. The memory of her, the one that got away. I remember so many things about her vividly. I remember her laugh, the smile that made her eyes light up like diamonds, the way her skin felt against mine and how she tasted. Most importantly, I think about the night we met. Like all the best and worst nights of my life, it all started with a song. I glanced up from my Camel Special Light 100 and saw her standing there. Her image filtered through the haze of smoke all around me, making her seem almost ethereal. The flies were blasting from the speakers in the back of the bar. I remember thinking that their song Got You Where I Want You would be our song from now on. Aw, hey. There I was, sitting in a room packed full of people. Most of them I knew, but none of them mattered now. I let my smoke dangle from my bottom lip and stood. I smoothed out my black and green checkered flannel and the Soundgarden tee on display beneath. A quick hand ran through my long, dark hair on the move. A place for everything, and everything in its place. Tell me your name. Suddenly, I was a shark, swimming my way through the filthy sea of humanity in search of the next big meal that would keep me moving. I glided effortlessly through the throngs of college kids, celebrating the end of finals week, for better or worse. I sailed through the reef of barflies and burnouts vying for my attention and their next fix for whatever addictions plagued them. To them, I was a god. To me, they were nothing. In one fluid motion, I grabbed 2 beers from behind the bar and gestured for Nick to put them on my tab. No words needed to pass between us, it was part of the routine. Finally, I circled her small gathering to get my bearings before going in for the kill. Maybe just a smile. I slid into the recently vacated chair on her left, slipping the beers onto the table in front of us like a magician in reverse. I gave her a wink and a patented grin when she looked over at me, completely in tune with the song that was still chugging along with the rest of the bar. She grinned back and sipped my offering, so trusting. We were comfortable in that initial silence. It was clear by her actions that she believed she was in control, silently sizing me up as the song played on and I played the game. "Could we talk for a while? I'm Sam," I offered. "I know," was her only response aside from the grin that hadn't left her face since the moment I sat down. It was the kind of reply that might shake the confidence of a lesser man. A simple move that bespoke the power she believed she held over me. If she knew my name, what else might she know? The game was afoot. "Interested in another round?" I asked, gingerly tilting my empty towards the bar. "That depends," she replied, bright green eyes boring into me like a drill headed for the Earth's core. "On?" I asked simply. "If you can answer 3 questions correctly, I'm all yours. I'll buy the next round, and we'll see where the night takes us." Her grin turned mischievous as she laid out the rules of our exchange. "I think you're smart." This was a woman who knew exactly what she wanted in a man and wasn't interested in wasting time. Rather than flee and run screaming into the night, I doubled down. Strong spirits were made to be broken. "Shoot," I replied, matching the intensity of her gaze. Question 1. The ending of Spielberg's Close Encounters of the Third Kind, would you have stayed or gotten on the ship? There was no hint of humor in her voice when she spoke. She wasn't asking if I'd seen the movie so much as implying that not having seen it marked me as inadequate in some way. It was a bold move and a quick way to separate the chaff. I didn't hesitate in my response. I'd be on the ship before they finished making the offer. Neary had it right. Why stick around and go through the normal routine when you could be out there discovering the secrets of the universe and challenging yourself? Complacency is the death of progress. I could tell by the look of surprise on her face that I'd caught her off guard. Whatever she'd heard about me, it clearly wasn't much, or even accurate. She moved on to the next question as quickly as I'd answered the first. "You sweet thing. What's the answer to the ultimate question of the meaning of life? The universe and everything?" A smugness radiated from her now at the query, a smugness that was clearly not deserved. 2, but that's not the complete answer. The complete answer would require a proper question. Something like how many roads must a man walk, or something equally subversive. I'd had that answer sitting in my back pocket for years. I was a little disappointed by that. No self-respecting connoisseur of popular culture would ever get that wrong. What sort of guys had she dated before that something like this had become necessary? Perhaps I'd made a mistake this evening. Rare, but not impossible. I was about to say, "So long, and thanks for all the fish," when she hit me with the next and final question. "Tell me your sign. Favored class and why?" Her eyes narrowed as those words fell from her ruby lips. That was a loaded question. You can almost ascertain someone's entire personality by looking at their Dungeons and Dragons characters. If I said cleric, it meant that I was a caretaker. A rogue meant I was shady. A fighter or barbarian made me a meathead. A general magic user made me a bookworm. The list goes on and on. This question took even less time for me to answer than the others. There were few things I was as sure about in life as this. Bard. They're the most versatile of all the classes. They can become whatever a party needs in any situation. As jacks of all trades, they dip into every class. They're confident, creative, and excel at overcoming all odds. Whether they're building up their comrades or tearing down the enemy, they do it in style, I said with a calm and collected demeanor, as if I were stating some fact that everyone inherently just knew and agreed with. She took my hand in hers and gripped it tightly, then pulled me in to press her lips roughly against mine. In mid-kiss, she crawled into my lap and wrapped her arms around me. Despite the strong taste of cheap beer and cleverly named cocktails, it was pleasant enough. When we came up for air, she pressed her forehead against mine and whispered gently, "Fuck, the drinks. Marry me? I'm dying here." She'd taken me as much by surprise as I had taken her that night. In one instant, we had both become what we thought the other desired most. Two chameleons latching onto one another and going, plaid. We ditched all pretenses and made the obligatory sophomoric sojourn to her place. 10 minutes later, I was in like Flynn. For days, weeks, and even months, we went on that way. We met at a different club or bar every weekend and fell in love all over again. She was a different woman every time we met, and I became her perfect companion. Each night she asked me to marry her. We'd rush back to her place and fuck until she passed out from sheer exhaustion. Come morning, I'd be gone, along with her memory of me. It was a dangerous game. I knew that even then. Be it her personality, taste, or very being, I was hooked beyond reason. I'd become little more than the addicts I reviled, desperate for my next fix. I glance up from my thoughts to the old, dusty, broken windows. If I could see myself, truly see myself, what would I see now? Would I see what so many others have seen? A demon lurking behind the eyes of a silver-tongued angel? My hands instinctively wrapped the high-collared trench, my proverbial armor, tighter around my body. Whether it was to hide old wounds or cover the place where my heart once beat, it made no difference. I'd lost myself to reverie once again, tuning out the sounds of yuppies and anarchists fighting it out behind the low walls that separated private parking lots from the street. I focused now on happier times, all 1 year, 7 months, 4 days, 9 hours, and 27 seconds worth of them. We were destined to end in tragedy, she and I. A story like ours wasn't meant for happy endings. I fooled myself well enough toward the end, and perhaps she did as well to some degree. However, when the inevitable end finally arrived, she recognized it long before I was willing to. I glanced up from my Camel Special Light 100 and saw her standing there. Her image filtered through the haze of smoke all around me, making her seem almost ethereal. She looked exactly as she had the first night we'd met. The flies were blasting from the speakers in the back of the bar. I'd slipped the DJ a crisp $50 bill when I made my request. Their song, Got You Where I Want You, was still our song after all. Aw, hey. There I was, sitting in a room packed full of people I still cared nothing for. I let my smoke dangle from my bottom lip and stood. I smoothed out my black and green checkered flannel. The Soundgarden tee was on display once again. A quick hand ran through my long, dark hair on the move. A place for everything, and everything still in its place. Tell me your name. I plunged back into the filthy sea of humanity, no longer interested in the pomp and pageantry. I glided effortlessly through the throngs of college kids, barflies, and burnouts, affording them not so much as a glance. My time was far too expensive now. In mutual silence, I grabbed 2 beers from behind the bar and gestured for Nick to put them on my tab. The routine remained the same. Finally, I circled her small gathering to get my bearings, paying them as little attention as I ever had, less if it were possible. Maybe just a smile. I slid into the recently vacated chair on her left, slipping the beers onto the table in front of us with all the usual aplomb. I watched her stoically at first, feeling something shift between us. When her eyes met mine, it was not accompanied by her usual smile. She left the beer unattended and turned to really look at me. For the first time, I felt almost uncomfortable beneath her gaze. Could we talk for a while? I'm Sam, I offered playfully. My attempt to fan our flickering flame, No, was her only response aside from the emotionless void within her dark eyes. Her reply shook my confidence to the core, an alien feeling, I must admit. It was a simple move that bespoke the power she held over me now. She knew my name and so much more. Interested in another round? I asked, gingerly tilting my empty towards the bar. That depends, she replied, dark green eyes boring into me like a drill headed for the Earth's core. On? I asked simply. If you can answer 3 questions correctly, I'm all yours. I'll buy the next round, and we'll see where the night takes us. Her tone promised something far worse otherwise as she laid out the rules of our exchange. This was a woman who knew exactly what she wanted in a man and wasn't interested in wasting time. Rather than flee and run screaming into the night, every fiber in my being now demanded, I played the odds. Shoot, I replied, unwisely matching the intensity of her gaze. Question 1. How long have you known? There was no hint of humor in her voice when she spoke. She wasn't asking if I knew her secret so much as implying that not knowing it marked me as inadequate in some way. She held me in high regard, and she was right to do so. I was nothing if not acutely perceptive. I didn't hesitate in my response. From the moment I first laid eyes on you, I'd heard some rumors, but I'd put little stock in them up until then. I just figured I'd stick around, go through the normal routine, and see what shook loose. Perhaps my complacency killed a little more than my progress this time around. I could tell by the brief flash of surprise on her face that I'd caught her off guard once again. Whatever she thought she knew, it clearly wasn't enough. She moved on to the next question as quickly as I had answered the first. You sweet thing. Why the game? A gnawing fear filled me at the query, a fear that was well-deserved, all things considered. It wasn't a game to me, Amina. A curiosity at first, maybe, but never a game. After all this time, you're still not asking the right questions, I revealed reluctantly. I was a little disappointed by that. Did she know me so little after all? The things we shared, the passion. Was it love? I wasn't sure, but she acted as if it meant nothing. Perhaps I'd made a mistake this evening, rare, but not impossible. I was about to say my goodbyes and never darken her doorstep again when she hit me with the next and final question. Tell me your name. Are you in love with me? Her eyes narrowed as those words fell from her ruby lips, daring me to answer, daring me to bare my soul, if creatures like me ever had one to begin with. It was a loaded question. In some way or another, all the questions she had asked me tonight were, if I said no, it marked me as callous. It meant I had been taking advantage of her, and that couldn't be further from the truth. If I said yes, it made me a sucker to think someone as magical as her could ever truly love something like me. A sucker to think we could ever ride off into the sunset without the world around us burning to ash. If I said nothing at all, somehow I knew that would be the worst option of all. 99 times before tonight, I have met and fallen in love with just as many different versions of you. I know you now better than I will ever know myself. Am I in love with you now? I think it's more than that. It's some unknowable thing that love cannot begin to describe, I explained. This question took even less time for me to answer than the others. There were few things I was as sure about in life or death as this. She took my hand in hers and gripped it tightly, then pulled me in to press her lips roughly against mine. The blood on her lips was still fresh. In mid-kiss, she crawled into my lap and wrapped her arms around me so tightly I couldn't breathe. Despite the strong taste of iron and cloying death, she pulled away as my lips turned blue, pressing her forehead against mine, and whispered gently, "Marry me," she whispered cruelly. "I'm dying here." I nearly died that night. Not easy for someone like me to admit. Just before I passed out from the lack of oxygen, I felt her fangs enter forcefully into the flesh of my throat. I managed to press the button hidden in the sleeve of my flannel. A wooden stake, carved from an old white oak, exited my sleeve. From a heavily modified spring gauntlet, with a 50-pound draw weight, it was enough force to drop a grizzly bear. Her fangs tore my throat as she recoiled from the sound. We made brief eye contact in the split second before her body jerked back from the impact. It split the entire left side of her clavicle into pieces, and an oaken shard forced its way into her heart at an angle. It wasn't a perfect shot, but the damage was done. She screamed loud enough to crack the club's windows and burst through the door before my body hit the ground. I couldn't help but laugh inside as I considered her final words to me. Drowning in my own blood and seizing from shock as I lost consciousness. I was just as surprised as the coroner when I unzipped the body bag from the inside hours later and sat up on the table. I knew immediately what she had done, what her plan had been all along. My thoughts were suddenly marred by guilt and the grief of losing her. My own fear of death had robbed me of an eternity with her. Not much has changed for me since then, aside from my appetite. I keep the same hours, I hunt mostly the same prey, and now and then there's one less pickpocket or murderer on the streets. It's not the life I expected, but it's the one I deserved for my betrayal. Every now and then I still hear our song. For a while I ran from it, unable to face an eternity without her. Eventually it became a part of me, a mantra of sorts. I even find myself humming it from time to time while I set about my nightly endeavors. Aho,